More than a year after the death of Dolores O'Riordan, her voice lingers on the music she created with the Cranberries, who've sold more than 40 million albums over 3 decades, and now on the Irish band's 8th and final album, In the End. The guitarist Noel Hogan and bassist Mike Hogan from the Cranberries join me in the studio. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Now, the past year or so must have been pretty difficult. How are you guys doing?
We're okay. I mean, we've been keeping really busy. Obviously, it was devastating news January of last year, and it was kind of, I don't know, I don't think any of us really thought much further into the future at that time. You were just getting over the shock of it all. And but luckily, we had been working on these demos, you know, in kind of most of the year before, particularly the last 6 months, from kind of June to December that year. And you started to realise, oh, we've got all this stuff, I must start to go through it. And then we realised what we had, and that the vocals were so strong, even though they were demos. And it was a case of, what do we do now? Do we do this album? Do we finish it? Or, you know, do we let it sit there forever? But I think we felt like Dolores was so excited about doing this album, and the fact that the songs were so strong, that it would be wrong to not finish it.
And what was it like? Because you must have felt a bit like you had her in the studio with you when you were finishing.
Yeah, it was. It was quite emotional the first few days we started recording. But I think once we kind of got into the swing of it, it was normal work as usual. But I suppose we had about 5 days of the first recordings done, and we realised that we had something really special there, and we were kind of blessed really to have the vocals from the demos being so good as well, you know, so it was great.
Was In the End always the name of the album, and is this really the end of the Cranberries?
Yeah, like at the moment, the plan is this album will come out, you know, in April, and we will kind of start to wrap things up, I guess, in May. Now, as I say this, every day they keep asking us to do a little bit more, and it could be June or whatever. But we never sat down and spoke about it like that. You know, we figure we get this album done, and we'll do all the things that come with that, apart from playing live. And that's the one thing we are disappointed about. We used to love kind of, you release an album, you do the tour, and we can't do that now, obviously. So that is a bit of a disappointment for us. But I guess we're trying to look on the bright side of it, that we have this album. Otherwise, you know, the band would have finished on the 15th of January 2018 when Dolores passed away. That would have been the end of it. So the fact that we've even, you know, we have these demos that turned into the album, and being able to do stuff like this has just been a gift almost that she left behind.
Okay, well, let's take a look at a clip from the album. This is All Over Now. All Over Now opens the album with lyrics, you know, do you remember, do you recall, I remember it all. Can't help but read things into those lyrics now, can you?
We knew that was going to be the way, even doing this album. There's a lot of discussion in this album about things ending and coming to an end, and it was really referring to, I guess, a time in Dolores' life where she felt that she'd been through a lot in the previous 3 years, and she wasn't shy about telling people, you know, various things. But that kind of year, and especially that summer, she felt like, I've left that behind me now, that this is a new chapter of my life. And when we had the initial conversations about writing this album, she kind of was, you know, really so kind of pumped about doing it, and she kept saying, I've so much to say, so much has happened in my life, you know, give me the music. And you couldn't keep up with her. I mean, it was like delivering stuff, and she'd be ringing you 2 days later looking for more stuff. And so it was great to see her like that. But the subject matter on this album is very much about that time coming to an end and moving on. And it was written as another Cranberries album, and that's all it was ever meant to be. But unfortunately, when she passed away and you start listening to lyrics, you do, you know, we always knew people would maybe read a bit more into it than Dolores had ever planned.
Well, she always seemed to have premonitions in her lyrics in some way. You know, like your debut album, which sold 6 million or more now probably. Everybody else is doing it, so why can't we? It was such a good title. And it was her way of saying, you know, why shouldn't a band from a small city in southwest of Ireland get signed, conquer the world and make a great album? She kind of could see the future almost, couldn't she?
Yeah, she could really. I suppose we went through a really tough stage in the first album as well, where we were trying to get noticed, doing all small clubs and gigs like that. We thought at one stage it wasn't even going to work out for us. And then all of a sudden we got a call from America to say, come over. Linger had taken off in the States. So we went over, and then after that it just shot off. It did, like, it got massive after that. So in a way it was like a premonition, you know.
I wanted to talk about some of your memories, actually. You formed 30 years ago. A pivotal moment was when you were booked to support Suede in 1993. America didn't fall in love with Suede, but they did fall in love with you. You came back stars. What can you remember about that time?
It was crazy because, as Mike said there, like, if you rewind back maybe 6-7 months before that, we were on tour across Europe. We were the opening act for another Irish band. But I mean, we were playing to nobody. It was like, if you were lucky, 10 people a night would see us. Most of the time it was an empty room with people on their way into the show. And then in the space of a few months, we were in America, where the single had just taken off, the album had followed suit, and then we were playing like 2 gigs a night sometimes. You know, we were doing a show with, say, Suede or whatever other band we were playing with, and then doing another one later on again on our own, because there was that much demand. It was almost surreal, because you couldn't believe this was happening. Because, as Mike said as well, like a year earlier we thought we're going to be dropped. This is not going to happen, because the album had come and gone in Europe, and it's such a turnaround. It just, but we've really great memories of it, because as hard as it was just the 4 of us and a couple of our friends that helped us out at the time, and it was like this little gang that drove around and kind of spreading the word a bit, and it was fun to kind of, we used to get a great kick out of the whole thing when it did take off, to kind of look and go, finally people are starting to get it.
Yeah.
And on the second album, No Need to Argue, there was obviously the legendary song Zombie. And Dolores was set to record that again with the American heavy metal band Bad Wolves, actually the day she died. They released it anyway, obviously not with her vocals, and they decided to give the royalties to Dolores' 3 children. Let's just take a listen. What year did the original of that come out?
94.
94, so like
25
or so years ago.
And we were playing it live a long time before it ever came out. That we used to do that back then, write a song, and we didn't have a lot of songs. So it was like, write a song, put it in the set that night. So there's really, really early recordings of us playing like local shows, playing Zombie. So it's actually longer than that even. It's probably, you know, almost 30 years old, that song.
And they're still covering it. Why is it so relevant even today, do you think?
I don't know, really.
It's just the subject matter of it, really, isn't it? It kind of it covers, you know, even, I mean, all over the world with conflict going on everywhere. It seems to cover that. People are kind of, they kind of, it influences them in it, and they take it on board and understand the meaning of it, you know.
And you had been working on a documentary, a Cranberries documentary. Will you complete that now, do you think?
We think so, yeah. It's going to take a bit of time. I think it's actually about 3 years ago we started it. So we all did individual interviews. So there are these interviews with Dolores that have never been seen as well. So at least we have that also. The documentary began really as a documentary about the first album and about that whole time. But we've revisited that idea now in the last year. So the plan was really to get this album now, the new album out, and you know, one thing at a time. And then we have met with a few people about kind of expanding the idea of the documentary. But there's never been any done about us. So someone's going to do it. We figured we might as well do it.
Right.
Yeah.
And the new album, in the end cover, depicts you guys as a group of children, sort of showing your journey,
Yeah.
being young musicians to being older and wiser musicians. What do you think the Cranberries' legacy will be?
Look, we hope really that the music will be the legacy of the band. And I know that's what Dolores would want as well. Like, we did this because we loved music as teenagers, and we thought, we'll write songs and see what happens. And you hope that it will do something. I mean, none of us ever dreamt that it would be what it became. So to have so many hits as well, I think it's a great thing. And I've heard the songs a lot more in the last year, particularly since Dolores passed away. You hear a lot of the older songs being played, and that's a really good sign. Like, we think they sound as good now as they did back then. So if that's the legacy, hopefully that's that'll be the best thing for us, we think.
Well, Noel and Mike, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure to have you. We're going to end with one of the tracks, which is called The Pressure. Just a quick word about that. Yeah,
that was we would write, some songs would all be Dolores, some songs would be, a co-writes type of thing. So this began life as one of Dolores' songs, and it was an easy song for us to work on in the studio.
Okay. All right, thank you so much. We're going to leave you with that. This is called The Pressure. Remember our website. We're also on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. There's more news coming up on France 24 after this.
Special events.
The world's largest democracy heads to the polls. France 24 will be bringing you a new weekly program, India Votes. Each week we'll be featuring in-depth analysis and special reports from our team of correspondents on the ground.
Join us as we cover this crucial election in which over 8,000 candidates will battle it out in a contest for nearly 900 million votes. At stake is the future of 1.3 billion people.
Watch events unfold on France 24 and France24.com.